Brentuximab Vedotin was originally evaluated in the relapsed and refractory setting for Hodgkin lymphoma, and that's where it was initially FDA approved. And I would say in that setting, it prolonged patient survival. And that's because before Brentuximab was around, we didn't have very many options for patients who had relapsed, for example, after an autologous stem cell transplant. And so the median survival at that time, before Brentuximab was around, was only 2 years. And now that Brentuximab is around, it's significantly longer for those patients. But of course, because Brentuximab is highly active and fairly well tolerated, there's been a lot of excitement to try to see if it can impact the treatment for Hodgkin lymphoma earlier on in the treatment. And you know, the biggest data with regard to Brentuximab was the recent Echelon-1 study, where it was evaluated in the frontline setting. And on that study, patients were randomized to either 6 cycles of ABVD chemotherapy or 6 cycles of Brentuximab plus AVD chemotherapy. The bleomycin was not included in that regimen because it was found that there is an interaction between Brentuximab and bleomycin, where there's a significantly high rate of pulmonary toxicity if we keep those drugs together. So between those two arms, there was the study ended up being a positive study where there was an improvement in progression-free survival. It was actually the primary endpoint of that study was actually modified progression-free survival, which is slightly different. But basically, there was an improvement for the patients who received Brentuximab plus AVD. The concern or the criticism of the study was that the difference in the two arms was not as high as we would have liked. There was only about a 5% difference between the two arms. And the addition of Brentuximab to the treatment does add some costs, such as toxicity. There are higher rates of neutropenic fever, requiring that every patient get growth factor when they get Brentuximab plus AVD. There's higher rates of neuropathy. And then, of course, Brentuximab happens to be quite expensive, and so then there's also added costs in that way. And so, when looking at the data with regard to the Echelon-1 study, there are certain groups that seem to benefit more from the addition of Brentuximab, and those were patients who had stage 4 disease, those were male patients, those were patients with greater than 1 extranodal site of disease. And so those are patients that we may consider those are patients who are, if we consider them to be higher risk, those are patients that I might consider using Brentuximab for, particularly patients who have an international prognostic score of 4 or more. But otherwise, for the majority of the patients, I am not using the Brentuximab plus AVD arm as AVD treatment because I think that we see very good results with the RATHO approach, and it's much better tolerated.